Good evening, good afternoon, good morning. Universal suffrage has been a curse to Zimbabwe because whether we want to care to admit it or not, both the ruling party and the opposition have never really taken the trouble to educate the voters. Democracy works only if the voters are educated, knowledgeable, and objective. Because they've got the duty, the sacred duty of holding those in public office to account. But both ZANU-PF and the opposition have never taken the trouble to educate the voters. And this is at the heart of our problem. And now what we are seeing in our politics is a competition by both ZANU-PF and the opposition to win the votes of what Pastor Chiwenga described the other day as the dunderhead voters. Here is Chamisa doing his best to that end. Well. I'll bet you my bottom dollar that none of those men and women understood that in 2023, Chamisa lied to them that he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. They believed him and they participated in those elections, flawed elections, only to give ZANU-PF legitimacy and perpetuate the dictatorship. None of them understand that. And because of that, he is courting them now for 2028. And we can be rest assured if he tells them that he's going to win the 2028, they will believe him again, participate in those flawed elections, and thus perpetuate the dictatorship. This is the tragedy of Zimbabwe.
You know, the worst thing that could ever happen is politicians figuring out that, churches have become a fertile ground to prey on desperate people. And we are seeing it both sides of the political divide. Here we have Mnangagwa with his Mapostori, who really don't know or care much and are easily brainwashed. I mean, on a lighter note, somebody is talking about Sapatina as, a language from heaven, where I believe they just could not figure out to say supper and dinner. And then they just picked up. It's normal, with our people to do such things, and now you find Chamisa has also joined the squad, and he's gone to tap into the areas that ZANU PF has not tapped, is going to funerals and doing preying on vulnerable people at people's weakest point, because people in Zimbabwe are desperate. They could even hold on to straws just to make the next day, just to make life bearable. And, unfortunately, like you said, most of the people that are surrounding these guys, these politicians, they really know better. They really cannot see beyond their nose. Hence, they can be easily manipulated. And you are right again to say, come 2028, it's not going to take much to convince them, if they're not convinced already, that this is the life that they are supposed to live. And things are getting better just because they're being told they're getting better.
Well, one of the things that I would like to emphasize here is that the voters in the rural areas, they really very rarely act freely. In these elections, ZANU-PF, even from as far back as soon after independence in 1980, ZANU-PF has always maintained that the rural areas is their stronghold. And the main reason for that is not so much that the people are easily conned, but that the regime has deliberately kept them poor and powerless. One of the effective ways the regime has kept the rural people poor is denying them title deeds to land. This is the one property right that would mean everything to them. Ian Smith and the white regime realized the same thing as well. The late John Robertson, an economist and banker of renown in Zimbabwe, advised Ian Smith in the 70s that if he gave the rural people title deeds, they would be able to invest in the piece of land, even if it's just a few acres, build themselves a decent house, and develop it. It will be an asset that even if they should want to move, they can sell the house plus that land with all the improvements they've made on it. Ian Smith refused because he argued if you give them the right to the land, the next thing they would want is political rights. ZANU-PF has done exactly the same thing. ZANU-PF has kept the rural people poor and powerless. Here is Margaret Longo speaking on that very subject.
They have wrong priorities, especially the current government. How can you go and build an airport which services a few people, and the majority are the elite and the so-called investors? Look at the rural. I made you come to interview me because I wanted you to have the experience of the roads that we are using. If we go today to our hospital there, you feel pity with that's a hospital in a rural area. If we go to our clinic, you feel pity. We have no piped water here. Do you know the reason why the rural people vote for ZANU-PF? One, they're intimidated. Two, the policy is that the rural people should remain poor and subservient to the government. They should remain poor, because if they remain poor, they continue singing the song for their master. This is why these people have been impoverished. It's for a reason. Because the moment, if you economic empower these people, they'll go out of hand. ZANU-PF will never have control over them.
ZANU-PF has deliberately kept the rural people particularly poor for its own personal political gain. So if we were to look to the voters as the means of achieving meaningful change, we have to look to that constituency of the voters who are participating in these flawed elections out of their free will. And there will be a chunk of that from ZANU-PF supporters themselves, particularly those in the church. And then the other chunk would be supporters of the opposition. It doesn't make any sense at all why the opposition supporters keep participating in these flawed elections. That argument cannot be denied. We have seen that happen over and over again. Why are the opposition supporters participating in these flawed elections? Most of them would have done O-level, if not better. And yet, some of them still do not understand what constitutes free, fair, and credible elections. And hence the reason why leaders like Chamisa are able to con them, make them believe that I've plugged all the vote rigging loopholes. I'll win these elections. Triple C will win big. And then soon after the election, he's the first one to admit that ZANU-PF rigged the elections. The very thing that he said ZANU-PF will not do. And yet the same people are failing to ask, so why did you lie to us? This is where our problem is. This is why I argue that universal suffrage has been a curse to Zimbabwe. We have to look at how are we going to get out of it. Ben, how are we going to get out of this?
It's a very good question, but one that is very difficult to answer. I mean, look, I think you explained very clearly that the rural people really don't have much of an option. We have seen what they go through. We've seen how FAS was bullying them around. The chiefs are bullying them around. The headman is always there, and so forth. But then you come into urban areas where you would expect that you would find most intellectuals at, but you will find, for example, when Mnangagwa ousted Mugabe, many of the so-called intellectuals, I'll give, for an example, somebody that actually admitted, Trevor actually admitted to say, I was one that was very, very supportive of Mnangagwa, and I thought he was going to do marvelous. We are easily sold. It doesn't really take much to convince, the so-called intellectuals. I'll give you another example. Nyoka Mabunu was out and talking, a lot of stuff. And a lot of people came out saying, let us support him. Let us support him. In a fight that was between ZANU-PF and ZANU-PF. And whoever would have won there and whoever is going to win this factional battle will still be ZANU-PF. So there is no choice for us, really. But then again, most people don't see it. All of a sudden now, Chiwenga has become a saint, is spotless. He is the most, decorated hero right now in Zimbabwe. Yet his works and his track record speaks for itself. He is no better than what we are dealing with right now. And to answer your question, it's going to take us to actually start thinking for ourselves. Not necessarily thinking outside the box, but thinking for ourselves, like how human beings should. This is what separates us from animals. Our ability to think. And I think sometimes some animals can think better because, it's very depressing that 45 years we still haven't yet figured out what are free, fair, and credible elections. We just think that voting is a right, no matter how flawed the election process is itself. So flawed that, any blind man can see that, it's a one-way fight. It's a predetermined fight already. ZANU-PF is going to rig the elections, and it's got a ZEC in its corner. ZEC that has got ZANU-PF children in there. And still, come 2028, they will still go to the poll, even though being warned by the international community. So it's very difficult to help somebody that doesn't want to help themselves. And in English, they say you can take the donkey to the river, but you can't make him drink. And I think this is where we are at, especially with the international community. They have been telling us what to do, but in our own wisdom, we think we know better. Hence, they have since dumped us to wallow in our own mud, basically.
Well, to answer that problem, is there a solution to Zimbabwe's failed political system? And I've identified the problem as universal suffrage that extended the right to vote to people who have no clue what they're voting for. There is no doubt that a country like Zimbabwe could have done the same thing as other countries in the neighborhood, for instance, South Africa and Botswana, where the founding fathers had the commitment to making sure that the ordinary citizens enjoyed their right to a meaningful say in the governance of the country. And so, therefore, they never set out to exploit those who have no clue what the right to vote means. In Zimbabwe, we did not have such luck. Hence the reason why we are in this mess. Is there a solution? And I would say, yes, there is. We have to educate the voters. And in this case here, we should start with educating those voters voting for the opposition who are not under any coercion at all. The opposition do not have the same coercive means as ZANU-PF has. And therefore, then their participation in this flawed election is a question of their own ignorance. Ask yourself, why is it that you are refusing to accept that Chamisa lied to you, not only once, several times, conning you to participate in flawed elections, which you have been told, and you now know they've only given ZANU-PF legitimacy and perpetuate the dictatorship? And the answer to that is because many of those people have the personality cult mentality. They believe Chamisa is a demigod who can do no wrong. And therefore, then to accept that Chamisa is a liar and a conman is unthinkable. That is where our problem lies. Let me state it here loudly and clearly. Chamisa is a mere mortal. And not just that, he is one who is corrupt, incompetent, a liar, and a conman. The evidence is there. To keep ignoring the evidence is a clear sign of the weakness of some people. Mankind is supposed to be a creature of reason. Why some people are refusing to reason beggars belief. Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you very much, the administrator, for your help. I just wanted to underline what we are showing at the bottom of your screen there. Tomorrow, we are going to have an open discussion. If you use the link at the bottom of the screen there, you'll be able to join us and you can have your say in the discussion. I hope you'll have the time to do so. It will be 7 o'clock UK time, 8 o'clock Zimbabwean time. Thank you very much again. Have a good night.